Greetings YouTube and welcome to a video I have spent, several hours talking behind the scenes with people who have really, interestingly enough, made the same request for this video even though they don't know one another. You see, there have been patterns of complaints after the first Alliance War of the new matchmaking process, and it's interesting to me to see patterns of basic feedback depending on what alliance you're in. It could be the Gold Alliance, it could be a Platinum Alliance. I even heard from some Master Alliances. And there are a couple of key issues I want to address in this video. But before I begin, I do want to say that the two countries of people, the two areas of people that reside and play this game that have celebrated this new matchmaking system. Now, given this is before Alliance Quest starts, so I feel like there could be some different emotions once that actually starts. But for the moment, if you live in India or South Africa, you won the time zone lottery because you are so excited to have the opportunity to play and place your defenders and do the attacking phase at a reasonable hour. So if you're in those destinations, those places, I would imagine that a lot of what I'm about to say is not going to apply to you, or at least not about a third of it. But there are going to still be some issues for you that we haven't seen yet because, like I just said, Alliance Quest has not begun. But let's start with the biggest issue that I have been told from the first hour that the new matchmaking system was in place. And that's the notion, the belief, and ultimately the proof that matchmaking is still broken. You've got to understand, YouTube, there are people who reached out to me who said, look, I know that matchmaking was an issue, especially if you had top alliances colluding with each other to not be matched during the same time window and to keep your best chance at a top 10 master placement. I know that was happening, but I never saw a terrible matchup, a terrible mismatch either way, whether it's in favor of this alliance or not in favor of this alliance, in the multiple months, even over a year of doing the standard Alliance War matchmaking process until now. So ironically, I was receiving messages from summoners from all different levels of Alliance War saying that their first Alliance War had a bigger mismatch than any Alliance War they'd ever fought before, which is ironic since the whole point of this new system is to make matching more fair. So that was complaint number one, and dare I say it was a very legitimate complaint for many alliances, although in the new system's defense, my alliance went up against probably the best defense we've ever played, but in terms of war rating, it was within 100. So on paper, war rating at least, it was very, very close and very even, and so the matchmaking process worked for my alliance matchup. The second issue, which really affects people in this part of the world, ironically, at Kabam headquarters in Canada, and certainly the United States, Mexico, we are now in a window where, because we only have, 4 hours to actually match up with an alliance, no matter what, you are looking at a schedule of finishing an alliance war in the early hours of the morning where people are trying to get their kids to work, or they're at work, or in many cases, because I feel like insomniacs, including myself, play this game, we're used to staying up until 3, 4 a.m. routinely, and then, sleep until at least 9, maybe 10 o'clock for those of you that don't have to get to work at 8. Quite a few freelancers play this game, and so you can kind of set your own hours, I guess. So we've had several great people who just didn't wake up in time to finish moving, to finish off a mini-boss, to finish off a path, or to help out with the final boss. Because we're used to finishing Alliance Wars in the afternoon, right? We're used to finishing Alliance Wars at around at least 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, but as late as 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. So, if you're not up by 6, you probably have the worst hangover of your life, or maybe you're in the ER. But in general, that was never an issue. Now you're having to sacrifice a multitude of things. Productivity at work, getting your kids to school on time. And who wants to be thinking while you're doing all that in the morning, man, I really need to move an alliance war? And I get that there are some countries out there that this was the case in the previous alliance war system. So you all are kind of just feeling like, well, now you felt like we felt for years. I get that. You can't please every time zone. But to my knowledge, I would imagine that United States users make up at least around half of the users who play this game. I know that it's a global phenomenon, but to inconvenience the people that are the breadbasket of your profits is quite the curious decision. But I think the biggest ramification for this is something we haven't seen, and that's why I wanted to make this video before the next start to Alliance Quest, especially the Map 7 Alliance Quest. And this is how it's always been. Alliance Quest is something that if you time your war placement right, you can, in theory, between the time your war ends and Alliance Quest begins, be guaranteed, even if you have to wait like maybe an hour, I don't know, to bring in your best attackers. And sometimes your best Alliance Quest attackers also happen to be your best Alliance War defenders. So now those times are overlapping to such a degree that there have been a lot of complaints. I'm talking about, I don't know, at least 30 to me individually, people who don't know each other, saying, Prof, is everybody else seeing what I'm seeing? Where basically Kabam is making it to where we can't bring our best lineup into Alliance Quest, and we're trying to run Map 6 5 days a week, especially now that the cost to run the map is significantly lower than it was. Maybe there's some people who are looking to run Map 5 for the first time, and certainly there are going to be some people who are looking to run Map 7 for the first time. That's a tough task when you have your best roster, but when you don't, you're just stuck in a literal pickle. And so Kabam has made these times very inconvenient for the sake of the Alliance Quest cycle. I think there was a great analogy I saw in a forum post today where someone said, I feel like the matchmaking process was a crack in the previous building, and instead of dealing with the crack, they demolished the whole building and started a new one from scratch. They ended up having way more cracks than the previous one. The overall adage, if it's not broken, don't fix it, comes to mind. I know matchmaking in a sense was broken, but for many people it wasn't, and regardless, the timing wasn't broken. I never ever heard someone complain about the placement times of Alliance War. All I heard was obviously a few times where people never got a match. That was an issue. And Kabam has said that, quite simply put, their servers can't handle everyone placing and matching up and running Alliance War at the same time, which is why there's this staggered period where you get placed. You have that 4-hour placement and then 20 hours until your attack phase starts. Either way, I just kind of hate it. And I really appreciate the alliance I've been in. I've been in there well over a year now, and in total, probably close to 2 years. Great guys, really solid dudes. But if Alliance War becomes such a headache that I lose precious sleep over it, or it just is not fun, at this point, I would even rather consider going alliance-less than I would having this be a stressor, because it's just not worth it. It is just not worth it at all. So between the issue of matchmaking still not being fixed, in fact, the opposite effect for some alliances who saw the biggest mismatch disparity they've ever seen in a score, to having time zone shifts that really, really hurt people on this side of the globe, to the bigger issue that's going to come very soon of people realizing, oh no, this window is eating into my Alliance Quest time, and I'm going to have to make a sacrifice either with Alliance War defense or offense or Alliance Quest attack. We've just seen multiple issues, and I don't know. I mean, some of these are so obvious that if you thought about them at Kabam headquarters, you had to think to yourself, man, this is a bad idea. Now, that's probably giving Kabam more credit than they deserve. But in general, you probably should have just kept the 4-hour. If you're going to have to do a 4-hour time window, fine. Make it, I don't know, 2 to 6 p.m. Eastern or 3 to 7. I think ideally, if I could name a time period, it would probably be 4 to 8, but maybe that would not be great for people across the pond. I do like to keep you in mind in these kind of videos. But either way, I would just kind of like to hear some feedback from all of you from your first Alliance War experience with this new setup. I do feel like they threw out the baby in the bathwater, so to speak, and really they just needed to figure out a way to get people who were trying to collude to not match up against one another to have that be better. And if that just means the exact same system we have right now, but moved 4 or 5 hours later, great, so be it. But if you're not ready to finish your Alliance quest really early in the morning, let's say you still have the entire Tier 3 of Map 6 and Map 7, and the Alliance War starts at that same point, and so you've got to wait, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours before you jump into Map 7 or Map 6, even maybe Map 5, good luck. It's going to be stressful. And we know from previous experiences with Alliance War seasons that the stress is already getting to several people who have had to retire. So the last thing we need is to add even more stress on something that is still technically a game. So it's supposed to be fun. Not a second job, not a third job. It's supposed to be enjoyable. So please let me know what you think. And as always, thanks for supporting my Marvel Contest of Champions YouTube channel and continuing to try to make this community the best place we can while still being very honest and transparent about the issues that plague this game.